the mental wisdom, and then
Yes.
the wisdom of the spirit, and then on the meditations we get the wisdom of the body.
No, I mean that's well, it's very helpful to me. The only reason I mentioned that deal about the crown chakra is because I don't know if you remember, but we talked about the illusion, the one of illusion.
Oh yeah. Well, I suspect your memory is much better than mine.
It isn't much. It is not much better. But anyway, I would have done it again, but it was I didn't want to. I said, well, maybe.
No, I thought it worked out well.
Yeah, well, because it was the one on attachment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a dawn dream that was really good, and then we were just getting started on a Charles dream. Charles, did you want to either repeat that dream or just tell any other dream that you had? That was one that you had on January 5th. I didn't have time to transcribe it. I was busy today doing commissions. It's the 20th is commission day. So I was doing them all day long.
Sorry, I was getting my coffee. What was that?
Oh, I was just going to say that if you want to, could you just, I didn't get a chance to write down your dream from last night. So I wondered if you could just either retell it or tell another dream if you don't like that.
Yeah, I can tell that dream again.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry I didn't write it down.
No,
I just was busy all day and I did not get a chance. But we at least we got to start on it anyway. But, sorry, Gary. I'd like to write it down.
Okay. Yeah. Well, hold on one second.
There's one on January 5th. The day before he came up here, it was shoot. I took notes. In an apartment. Let's see.
Sorry, I had to grab my.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so the dream is as follows. I was in a neighborhood where I had a house. I was standing alongside of a truck that was parked right by my house. And there were cars parked on both sides of the streets, and it was creating a bit of a traffic jam. As I was standing by this truck, a bunch of cars started to, basically, they were letting each other pass through this choke point, but then now both directions are trying to drive through at the same time. And so it creates a total traffic jam. And all of a sudden, an extremely large crane that was in the yard of a house nearby fell over. And a smaller crane pulled on that large crane, and then a truck pulled the smaller crane in order to get it to stand back up. But at some point during the whole process, somehow my house got caught in the crane's cables and flung it up in the air and turned it upside down as it was hanging from the cables of the crane. And I could see all my pets inside. I was extremely distraught and upset and was crying very heavily. Eventually the house was put back down on the ground, but I don't think any of my animals were actually that upset by it.
Okay. Well, now this was right after Charles came back from Louisiana and was going to start another job. The period of that when he was working down in Louisiana, I think you were working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and the accommodations weren't that great. You didn't have a car sometimes, so it was you were really just kind of working and sleeping, you know, and even the food wasn't too good, and you're spending a lot of money on Uber rides too, if I remember. But anyway, so now you're back in St. Louis. Okay, so now you're in a neighborhood house now that you own, and you're standing by a truck, and it's a kind of a just neighborhood street, but there's cars parked on this side of the street. There's cars parked on this side of the street, and then in between there are cars trying to go both ways, and it's just ending up. It's unbelievably congested. So there's a great congestion on the flow of life by your house, by the place you live. I mean, where you live, the flow of life is very congested. Nothing's moving; it's stuck. Okay, you know. And meanwhile, there's this very like a tower almost. A big tower topples over. So what happens is, and I think Kat mentioned this sometime last time, is that it's top heavy. All the weight is in the top, and not enough on the foundation or the ground. And so, since all it is imbalanced towards the vertical and towards the higher, and it doesn't have a very firm foundation. I mean, you're going to have a tall crane. You have to have a lot of weight, and you have to put things on both sides. When we in forklifts, sometimes if they're going to lift a big weight, they have to put a bigger counterweight on the back of the forklift to make it heavier, so it's more stable and it won't topple over, But this one is too top heavy and it topples over. Okay, so then a couple repair trucks come over, one a smaller crane and another truck, and they manage to get the top heavy thing at least upright. But meanwhile, the place we live in, this very congested place, goes up into the air with it. Okay, so it gets torn from its foundations by this top heavy tower, and now it's hanging there upside down, suspended in air. The place where we live is suspended in air. Our dwelling place, or the place where we reside now, is suspended in midair. Now, suspension is a great religious image. Wotan was suspended on the Yggdrasil, hung there for nights full 9, and the Christ was suspended at a quaternity. There was a quaternity, a 4. And he's suspended at the midpoint of the quaternity. The head and the center of the quaternity are in sync, when he's suspended on what's called the cross, but a cross is a quaternity. So he's suspended there, Now, our dwelling place is suspended in midair, turned upside down. So our life has been turned upside down by the top heavy thing that is very unstable in the very congested place, the place where nothing flows, everything's stuck, Okay, so the idea here is then, and it's full of instincts. We look in it, and the instinctive element, along with our dwelling place, which is hanging upside down, are suspended in midair. Okay, and this is a typical reaction in Charles, even though, I mean, Charles dreams, even though Charles in the dreams frequently breaks down and has an emotional catharsis because of a disaster or tragedy or something, you know. It doesn't happen in the outer world. So there are several things that have happened. One was where the the night was overcoming the day, and the day, or the night was going to be overcome by the barren, childless moon, the one that bears no children, was now going to be ascendant, you know, and we broke down there, and there's a couple other times. But anyway, then the house is returned to the earth, and this might be a sort of an idea of that our life was turned upside down in New Orleans, and it was top heavy there. You know, I mean, it was not a stable situation. One thing was overvalued that couldn't it was given so much value that the weight of the value, overvaluation of it, made it top heavy, you know, and it toppled. And then when it was tried to pull up by just sort of a makeshift repair, our dwelling, the place, our accommodation to life is turned upside down too. You know? But at the end, the house returns to the earth, and the instinctive life didn't even know it happened. You know, so this is sort of a it seems to be a commentary on a really spiritual crisis or of angst or something that we experienced through. How long were you there, Charles, in New Orleans? It was like from
about 3 months.
About 3 months.
Almost the same amount of time I spent in Maine.
Yeah. Now, did you was there any experiences of just a point where you just that this is I just can't handle this. It's just unsustainable or something, or
Yeah,
did you?
I mean, I had bouts of extreme anger when I was there. Most angry I'd been in a very long time. And yeah, I sort of just, I did get to the point where I'm like, this is completely unsustainable. And like, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, this is absurd. This flat rate of $200 a day became a joke once it was 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, no overtime. So it's like, oh yeah, forget this. Like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was. I mean, in other words, you worked more than 8 hours a day, but no matter how many hours a day you worked, you only got $200 a day, which is $1,000 a week. Is that right? Or maybe
I made $1,000 after taxes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it was a little over 1,000 then. Well, anyway, it seemed that Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, this sounds bigger than, a lot of the Charles dreams that we've had. When I think of a crane, I think of, something that's leveraged, and that, that it's pulled down, and then on the writing of the crane, it also pulls up the dwelling, and the dwelling is hanging upside down. I mean, I guess one of the things that strikes me about, the the type of work that Charles has been doing is that, you know, there's a big mismatch here because, you know, Charles is a bit of a dreamer and stuff, and dreamers always need their free time. And the one thing the food industry likes to do is have extremely heavy hours. So, you know, that's just a mismatch. You know, you need like a trade school or something so that you get into something where the hours are more like,
I don't know if you had heard, but I actually just recently got into a welding program.
oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I mean, like, yeah, you know, cause if anybody needs their free time, it's you. So yeah, I mean, you know, this, because this is such an uproad, you know, to actually pull, you know, so first the lever arm is over levered on the top, you know, too many demands on the head, you know, and it pulls the whole thing over. And then when it's righted, you know, the entire dwelling is lost and hanging upside down. I mean, this is you know, this borders on the nightmare.
Yeah, it is.
And, you know, and then just like the lack of flow, the congestion, you know, this is like, the type of thing that, you know, has a feeling of just extreme anxiety, you know, is the feeling that I get from this. And so, you know, it just speaks of, and very symbolically of, you know, just being uprooted in the worst form imaginable, you know. So that's,
Rooted.
yeah,
That's what the
yeah.
house was uprooted, turned upside down.
Exactly. So, I mean, you know, your response for, you know, finding the career shift, you know, seems like just entirely perfect for, you know, for what this dream sent to you, you know.
What do you think, Kat?
Hiya. Yeah, well, the thing is, like, vehicles take us from place to place, move us to different locations. However, there's a traffic jam. So again, there's no direction, no flow of movement, everything congested. But then when I was thinking about the crane, I can't help but feel like Charles is describing that experience in New Orleans, in the fact that some perhaps aspect felt like it just wanted to leave its body. Do you know what I mean? It's like you can feel so out of it when you're in a situation, you can feel so out of it. It's almost like you can be angry, but a part of you can sort of just go off as well, type of thing. And again, I think the fact that again you was worried about the animals, it was the instinct, but then you found that the animals were fine once the house had come down. So I think it's a much bigger dream. There's so many levels to it, but in some ways there's a lot of clarity to it as well, in the fact of the situation, you know, and now we know more from what Charles is saying, wasn't the right way to go in some ways. I don't want to say a warning dream, but it was a dream as such that if you had continued in that situation, could have got a lot worse. That's my feeling on it.
Very, that's great, Kat. I mean, you have a really good feel. The yeah, it is was the aspect that I just loved how you said it. It seemed like a warning dream, that could have went worse, but it didn't. Everything was. I just like the way you put that. I can't restate it, but I mean, you really encapsulated the reality of the dream to the site. You know what it meant, and it was an important dream. But what do you think, Charles? On retrospect, I just was trying to see a crane that fell over.
I think that it's like a paradigm shift kind of dream, and it makes me think of it's the word upheaval. It's like, you know, the house of Charles was ripped from the ground and flung through the air and turned upside down. So it's a total reconfiguration, maybe. And I've, you know, let's say a dream never tells you anything that you already know. Maybe it's just adding details, but I've known that I've reached this sort of point where I'm like, I can't turn back, but I don't know how to go forward.
That is,
And
yes.
I feel like this dream is kind of it's along those lines, but it's also really interesting that that crane fell over. Like, it was upon its resurrection that everything was up, you know, that there's this upheaval. And I think something that, you know, what I really wish I understood was why there's a little crane pulling on it and then a truck pulling that crane. Like, it's not just, you know, it could have been anything. This crane could have been pulled up by all different means, but it's this little crane and then like a regular civilian truck, pickup truck, pulling that, and like there's this cooperative effort to get it hoisted back up again.
Yeah, one that's not so well in the case now that it is too large for us. That the other one is more suited to us. That one is not going to topple over, and it just pulls this other one up. Okay.
It's a bit like boats, isn't it? Like you have these big ships, and then if there is a crisis or whatever, they have those little tugboats. Yeah.
Yeah.
To help them pull them along.
Yes. So yeah, I mean they're too big to maneuver themselves. They're so unwieldy, so clumsy that they need something a little more nimble to correct them. But in the process of this thing that is too large to maneuver in this congested space, with where nothing moves, it needed the more nimble, less grand, less
clumsy.
Yeah, clumsy. Yeah, something that's not suited to us. Something that is a something that is doesn't really fit us. It's too big for us at this point. We're biting off more than we can chew. In New Orleans, it was a good idea, but this is not for Charles. Okay, it's not for Charles. Now one thing Kat said too that I loved, it is working on so many different levels. It has to do with the job. It has to do with our relationship with the earth, our relationship to the body, our relationship to the instinctive world, the fact that there's no flow in life, the fact that our dwelling place is turned upside down, the fact that emotionally, at least the dream ego. What do you think it means when the ego in the outer world does not have these great releases of emotion, these great cathartic moments? Now, what does it mean to have a complete cathartic breakdown? You know, I mean, typically at some point, you reach bottom. You know, I mean, you know, at some point, what the cathartic, I think what the cathartic process, it's sort of like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of acceptance. You know, how does the catharsis end? It's where you surrender. Now, why did the catharsis start and keep going? Because we didn't surrender. We were unwilling to surrender. There was something we were holding on to that was, you know, this ego was, you know, is well, you know, somebody told me one time, and I loved it, that anger is caused by a willful attitude that you want something to happen and it doesn't happen. Okay, so it's this lack of acceptance. The will says, this is the way I want it. It doesn't happen that way. And so you become angry, you know. Now there's different levels of anger, you know. But anyway, it is, I think, a commentary on that whole scene. I mean, let's go through it. You went to Maine. We're unhappy there. And then you went to St. Louis. It was just more than you could handle. It was top heavy. All work and no food for the soul. You know, it's top heavy. It's all work, all money, you know. And the soul is the ground of our soulful life is being completely ignored, you know. And yeah, it was not something that you could do for years and years, for sure, you know. Did you have any other comments about it, Charles? Or
no, I think
no.
you know, I appreciate everyone's input on it. I think I'm gonna still try to think about it a little bit more and try to understand this cooperative effort to raise the crane back up. It just, the phrase I want to use is like it was like the community came together and helped out.
Exactly. There's some aspects. Okay, let's just put it this way. There are inner figures in your life that were trying to clean up the mess that ego had made, you know, at least do something. I mean, there's animal helpers or something that are trying to right what I mean, what really caused the collapse of the tower was, you know, a sort of an unrealistic decision that we made, or something, you know, that seemed good at the time, but then was just, when we encountered it, we just realized this is not sustainable. It caused a you know, the analogy in the dream is the toppling over of a crane, and then the aspect. Now I really think, if you want my opinion, the cooperative effort of the smaller crane in the truck really didn't help anything. You know, it lifted the top heavy thing, and in the process uprooted our house and turned it upside down. Now, how is that helping? What do you think about that, Charles? Was that help?
Well, I was gonna say kind of something
Yeah,
along
go.
the same lines,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, it was like saying, okay, you can, you know, go in and try to make adjustments, but it's just gonna create a bigger disaster.
Right,
know?
there you go. You know, I mean, you're going to just create a even bigger disaster than what you had. That's fabulous, you know. Now, the idea though at the end of the dream, how did you feel at the end of the dream? Because it was it seemed like there was I don't know. Now the crane is still standing, and the house is on the ground. What do you think, Charles? How did you feel at the end of the dream?
I was still really shaken up and feeling for my pets. But I think that I need to try to understand what this crane means, because it's really like for it to be resurrected, then the upheaval needs to happen. Like it was this was a connected event, but I think maybe the crane is like a new kind of direction or like aim at like trying to of progression in some way. I don't really know, but yeah, I think, I don't know, we spent about half an hour on it, so I'm more than happy to leave it at that.
Yeah, the one thing we do know is that the crane can't stand up by itself. You know, Charles, or I mean, Gary, this is what I was kind of thinking of when you were describing it, anyway, it is, Nicholas is here, okay. Nicholas, why don't we kind of finish describing, now I would just ask you, Kat, do you have a dream you want to discuss?
Yeah, well, I've got a short one, but if anybody else wants to go, what about you,
Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's do your dream, Cap. But Nicholas, did you have any comments on your dream about the well, just maybe finish up your dream on the Christian or the fact that there's too many messiahs here lately. There's an uptick in messiahs, and then we'll do Cat's dream. But did you had a few thoughts about that? And Charles, you never got to say anything about it either. Let's see here.
Wait, what?
Oh, I was just saying, Charles, that the dream about the uptick in messiahs.
Mm-hmm.
You were sick that night. I just wondered if let's see. I put that in the. Oh yeah, I put it in an email. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Yeah, and hey, Nicholas, you're muted. I don't think anyone heard what you were saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry about that. I was just saying, despite all of the rather potent symbolism in the dream, the two things that have made a lasting impression on me actually have been the dog and how that may relate to kind of a death of some instinct or something like that. As I mentioned last time that we talked about the dream, it's much easier for me to kind of live in my head. I'm very at home in my thoughts, and that's kind of my native area. So being in touch with instinct, my body, with the earth is perhaps more tenuous for me personally. So that seemed to really hold something meaningful for me. And the notion of kind of going down into the valley, this female figure trying to take me even further down into the valley and seemingly saying, no, we're going to have to be here for a while. You know, we're not going to make it to your father's house just yet. And that's really interesting for me. You know, it's part of a series of dreams actually that have all contained Christian religious symbolism, which is strange for me. I mean, I come from a Christian background, but have distanced myself over the larger part of my life from that background. So it's quite interesting that that's something that's coming up now, but also along that line, I have several dreams that start with, I'm going to my father's house.
Yes.
And I realized that as I was looking back over it, perhaps a week or so ago. And that's something that I'm just sitting with. And then the final thing that's really been something for me to think over is which I shared with, I don't know who here saw the email that I sent. I didn't have everybody's name in an email thread, so I just included everyone that I could remember. But there was some confusion over a word that I used in the dream, and I was thinking of another word. The word that I put down and the word that I was thinking of were two different things, but it actually revealed something more meaningful in the kind of slip up that I made. I put down ameliorated, and I remember that being my thought in the dream. But also thinking, you know, he looks very unwell, and as if it was Christ on the cross. So when Craig brought up in the discussion that ameliorated meant restored, I kind of felt some dissonance, because I was like, wait a second, I had a completely different association to that word, or the definition I had in mind was something different. But it's funny how reconciling that with the notion of the body and death of instinct, maybe coming back into the body, and then the restoration of the body, all seemingly kind of throw light on a similar situation. So those have been my personal takeaways. Of course, I'm open to any more comments you all would like to make.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting to me that you know, the difference between the word that you meant to say was emaciated.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, emaciated. Now, I for many years had this recurring dream that I would open a basement door, and up out of the basement door would come a dog that had been dead for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And had been completely forgotten, and it was emaciated. So it was a dream about emaciated dog. Well, now this was my instinctive life, which had been put down in the basement, ignored, and not fed for 20 years. And then I suddenly open up the door. It's still there. Yeah, I just haven't fed it, you know, all this time. And, you know, it is, that was a recurring nightmare. I mean, dream. But now in this case, the word used instead of, and it was and you said this was an unusual word for you to use.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ameliorated would not be in my vocabulary at all. Emaciated, maybe.
Yeah.
But ameliorated, no.
Yeah. Well, the idea with ameliorated means that it's a restored body. So when you said, or when in the dream says, that that he took his shirt off and we saw his ameliorated body. Mm-hmm. What I thought it meant was it was his body that had been crucified, but now had been restored. You know, so yeah, it was a wonderful contrast. But the fact that during the whole dream, there seems to be this sort of I mean, it came up a couple times where you are saying, he looked just like I did when I had long hair, you know, and so there was even from the beginning of the dream, we know that Christ is you, you know. Now Christ. Let's just talk about the image of the Messiah or the Christ for a second. What the Messiah really is the archetype of the self, you know, and it is it has a the fact that it's a redeemer, you know, that just means redeems who, you know. Well, see, it comes up 2 or 3 places. First of all, your father is the first person to bring it up, and he says that there's been an uptick in the number of messiahs around here lately. And then you say something very biblical. You know, you say, well, okay, let's start out with this. Okay. Now it starts out that you see a dog. You think that it's been killed by the feminine being neglected and being neglectful. And you say it looks like our dog, and you're afraid that your sister, who's really is an anima who you have who you aren't close with, you know, the feminine, which you don't have a very good relationship with. Not that you don't have a good relationship. You call her your biological sister. What do you mean by that? I mean, basically she's your biological sister, but your relationship with her is not that close, right? Or what does that mean?
Well, of course, I hadn't really given too much thought to it. I guess it's just something I said. She's my half sister, so it's not as close as, you know, maybe one would be with a sibling they grew up in the same house with. We're certainly close, I suppose, in the way that all siblings are. You know, there's definitely a deep connection, but at the same time, she's much older. We grew up in separate houses. She has children of her own. So,
well, yeah, but I don't believe it is the literal sister. I mean, it is some type of anima, you know, some type of feminine within us, and it's represented by her type, whatever that is.
right, I see.
Yeah, and so it's very doubtful it's the literal sister, you know, or the literal father, you know, but see, then what's funny is then we go through Eden, you know. Well, the thing is, when we see the dog is dead, this instinctive aspect of ourselves, we're more urgent to get to where we're going, and I mean, we move faster, and then we go by apples and grapevines, you know, wine and Eden, you know. The wine is this is my blood, you know, the blood of Christ, and the apple is Eden. And as soon as we take one bite in the apple, the snake shows up immediately. The bite of the apple and the snake appearing are synchronistic events. They're the same event. Okay, so what it means is that eating that apple has some type of a symbolic thing. What does it mean to take a bite of that apple? Okay, so what kind of an apple is it? You know, it's this apple that we meet on the side of the road. And then right after that, so that's the first image. Then right after that, your father starts talking about an uptick in Messiah figures. And then, but we ask him, and this comes straight out of the New Testament, you know, is who are you to deny that one among them? Now, does that sound like something you would say?
No.
No,
not-
I mean,
not-
yeah, that's almost a quote from a Bible, some kind of a New Testament line. Who are you to deny that one among them is the Messiah? No, well, and what you really are referring to, you're not defending them. You know internally that you and now first of all, you know the fact that we identify ourselves with the self. Okay. Now remember the divine Son, you know, is the divine Son in Christianity is very hard to understand. But the divine child in alchemy, you know, is the philosopher's stone. Okay, and so the idea is that this now in an alchemy, who is the redeemer? You are the redeemer, and who needs redeeming? Not you. Your soul needs redeeming. So in alchemy, you are through you redeeming your soul, you redeem yourself too. But how do you redeem your soul? You give it your full attention. I had this one of the really cathartic instances of a disconnect with the feminine in my life was when I was like 13, 14 years old. I had a date. I made a date with the girl. I was incredibly shy, very introverted, you know, and it just, I just out of nervousness, sheer embarrassment, you know, I made a date with this girl. And of course, you know, the intuitive never wants to go anywhere. You know, they dread everywhere they go. You know, and so, or the introvert, it dreads going anywhere. And so I stood her up. Okay, that was horrible for me. I mean, this girl hated me the rest of my life, but now her name was Joanne. The name of my soul is Joanne. And why does her name Joanne? Is because every time I don't do a dream, every time I forget to do it, or not forget, just neglect to do an act of imagination and have an inner relationship with her, I've stood her up again. Okay. So every time I do that, I'm standing her up again. You know, so her name is Joanne is sort of a challenge to me that you don't stand her up anymore. That was what caused your problem in the first place. But the idea is that the Redeemer in alchemy does not redeem the world. The world doesn't need redeeming. We do. And the ego there's nothing in the ego to redeem. What is in the ego to redeem? What needs to be redeemed in us is our divine aspect, which is the soul. And how do we redeem it? By giving it our attention, by talking with it, by not standing it up, by taking its images and amplifying them and drawing them. You know, that's how we redeem it. You know, we give it light.
That's very helpful. I know that it's been I felt certainly ambivalent about this dream, particularly given that the dream concludes with me kind of, it seems to say that there's some identification issue at the end. And that's given me a very deep sense of ambivalence, not knowing if I should lean into whatever this inner savior figure is, or if it's really kind of speaking in a way of saying, maybe there's an over identification there in that I see this person in the dream and I say to myself, oh, wow, he sure does look a lot like me, or I sure did look a lot like him at one point. And so I've just been trying to find a way to properly align myself with whatever is there in the dream, rather than becoming overly identified or neglecting it, but finding a way to figure out right relationship and really do something with it. So
Let me
it's quite,
say, yeah, I'm going to say something real quick, and then I'd like to hear what Gary and Kat and Charles have, and then we'll go to Kat's stream. There is a problem with identity in the dream. The two figures are the literal ego, the one that is personality number one, which is our literal ego. Okay, and then there is the second part, and the fact that we don't have that we know that we are and are not that, is personality number two, the one who is the redeemer of our soul. The literal ego has no interest in having any relationship with the divine within us. Now, the soul, we were born with her. She and us were born at the same time. She has weight. Unlike spirit, she's related to the body. She has essence of the body in her. You know, there's always the question of when you die. People always said when the soul left the body, the weight reduced. You know, I mean, there's always there's these. But anyway. The idea is you and the soul share the life. Now, she has a very intimate friend with whom she confides in always. And that is the divine self. Okay. So that's why she's the psychopompos, the bridge. Okay, so the two people in the you and the identification with the Messiah is there's the literal ego in you that never leaves time and space, and its dryness, and its connection with deadness of ego and the thinking function. And then there is the water of life aspect of you that's related to the grapes and to the apples and to the dog, which is dead in us. It's very instinctive. This Redeemer is not the spiritual Christ. This Redeemer is one that is related to the wisdom of Sophia and her sum total of all archetypal patterns that ever existed, the latent potential of the pleroma, and that has to do with bodies, the formation of life. That is this water of life redeeming figure who is now going to establish a relationship with the unconscious. The anima is the personification of the wisdom of the collective unconscious. So that's that. Now, so then we're confused about, are we, where does my ID go in my billboard? Which one am I? Well, you're both, but the literal ego is the one that has to deal with, getting enough food to eat and paying the rent. But that's not who we are necessarily. Gary and Kat, do you want to have, and Charles especially, I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about it. Go ahead, Gary, or if you have any
Yeah.
comments.
So I'm going to take kind of a different interpretation. You can just, see what resonates. But when you make your comment to your father about, well, who are you to, deny that one of these might be the Messiah? That to me it's very much a comment from the head rather than the heart. And so to me, this feels like it's at the wrong level. And so it's at the intellectual level. And so his comment about the many messiahs, that might have actually been more spot on. And then, again, you were coming more from the head instead of the body. And where what was really necessary, was something that was more from the soul. And so then, I think you're right about the dead dog, the instincts which need to be, re-enlivened, if you will. But then you come across the apple, and as soon as you bite into the apple, the snake appears. Well, the apple is, especially in the Christian thing, it's kind of coming to awareness of something that wasn't there before. And the snake is very much a Hermes figure. And so the snake is able to travel to underground, to the underworld, to the unconscious, if you will. And, what are we most unconscious of? It's like, especially for puers or people which have had, in this particular case, a very Christian dream. The Christianness of the dream really enables this contrast between, the head and the body, the head and the soul. And of course, the Christians, the whole theology is very much a denial of the body. So that contrast really, I think it helps to emphasize what's important. And the emphasis in this seems to be about going into the soul. And, that's where the work is. That's why, the Christ figure is so emaciated, because, what he needs is not this intellectual approach. What he needs is the soulful approach. And so, I guess on kind of a practical note, I don't know if you can even make any of these Sunday things, meetings that we do, but we do, before the main meeting, we do an hour meditation. But these meditations that we do, you might almost think of them as almost like a body-centric meditation. They're sort of a propriocentric type of approach, where we work to become, more aware of the body and kind of transfer some consciousness down there instead. And I think, maybe that's the type of awareness that this dream is indicating that you need to do. And so, you might pick up, you might try it, see what things resonate, what things don't. If you find some things that resonate, I can provide you with some MP3s and things.
Cranial sacral, it really reminds me of the cranial sacral therapy, where basically we want, and I have to force myself to do this act of imagination, get that freaking awareness out of here and put it down here, or somewhere else. I struggle to put it below my heart,
So, and I think, for the people that are truly soulful, it's like, they respond from the heart, not from the head. And I think, that's a lot of the work is, how do you move in sort of this instinctual direction where, things become a bit more intuitive and less intellectual. So, I think the work in the dream is, it's fairly clear about saying where you have to go. Then the only question is like, oh my gosh, what is the work, realistically? Because sometimes figuring out dreams like, well, what do I do with this is kind of tough. But to me, it's like it's definitely saying get out of your head into your heart. And like the shuffling of the ID, I can see where, to me, that's also sort of a moving from the head to the heart type of thing. It's like, you shuffle the idea. Well, I'm going to shuffle where my identity actually comes from. So that would be a bit of my abbreviated comment, if you will.
Well, and I just want to mention too, the snake. Okay, Jung said, the snake, follow it wherever it goes. That's where we need to go. The dead instinct, the dog. And then at the end, the anima who goes down the slide and wants us to go down even further. We want to go up. She wants us to go down. Each one of those images, to me, I felt a certain melting of this other aspect, which has a brittle air to it of the Messiahs. Now, the other aspect is the Messiah is along where this Redeemer is living, or differentiated aspects are starting to form. So I don't think, now I think you need all of those things. I don't think it's one or the other. What do you think, Kat?
I was listening to what Gary said about the statement about when he answers, Nicholas answers his father and says, basically, who are you to deny? I thought that was quite impassioned, actually, and it was
Yes.
more for. I felt personally it was impassioned, and it was like standing up almost like for the rights of other people, because in another way you've got this restrictive other person who is quite like an astringent, really. He's kind of very concerned about what it looks like, I suppose, to other people. Then, right at the end of the dream, what are they sort of doing there? People coming down from the top end of the valley, coming down to where you all are, and it's kind of like, well, I'm doing nothing illegal. So that aspect
That was
reminds me
another
very much
aspect.
of the father, and the fact again of being told who you can be, where you should be, type of thing. And so Nick's response about who are you to decide, I thought was actually quite impassioned, really. Because I think a lot of the time we live in our heads about what other people, we imagine a lot of what other people may think of us if we do X, Y, and Z. And that can hold us back from a lot of things, and especially what of other people tell us as well. So yeah, again, the restrictive man just seems to be somebody that is a mouthpiece of other people's perhaps criticisms and judgments. To me, it doesn't feel like anything else but that, really. And again, like a very stringent kind of person. The thing with the lady going down into the slide and again into the cave, I do feel like I've said before, it's kind of like having more being in touch with the earth, in perhaps with the ancestors type of thing, but also the fact that she does come out of it and she has a cut in her hand is when she cut on her arm, is when she notices it, it starts to give her pain. So that I do believe in some ways there is something that as well, in the fact that we can't go fully into that sort of cave-like experience without trying to raise her up on the bike and to get up to the valley, which we previously tried to do before in the dream. So so there is that as well. Because yeah, there is a wound in there. So other than that, I can't really, I mean, I've wrote lots, but there's nothing really much that I can think of now that I haven't already said. So, it's all based on really what Nick takes from it, really.
The collective consciousness would be
Well, yeah,
restrictive aspect, the conventional,
yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry, because again, it's like those people from the top of the valley coming down, and the reserved man is concerned. So
Reserved
again,
man.
those are the kinds of people that are, in high place, affluent type of people, the high society, that we think that their judgments and opinions of us actually like mean anything, but well, to me they don't. Do you know what I mean? It's those affluent types that we sort of,
Well, it's got a very thick plot because you can't you have the sister who lets the dog out. You have the mysterious snake and the apple and grape orchard. What does that mean? The father who notices the uptick in messiahs, the messiah himself, and the valley with the formation occurring. Then the girl who has to do with the cave, she's related somewhat to the cave. Then you have the reserved man, who is he, the reserved man? What is the difference between the Messiah? What's the comparison and contrast between the Messiah and the reserved man?
But also, sorry, Craig, you've also got the dead dog, but
yes.
You've also got a snake that you don't see, but the threat is there in the rustling.
Yes.
Can I make just a few very quick
comments? Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else has the same experience, but I personally feel that I kind of have a somewhat of a personal symbol system. And, I've had a series of dreams, probably about 10 in a short period of time, and also all throughout my life, about snakes that have been incredibly, incredibly meaningful. So much so that it's taken on a very, very deep personal meaning for me. I've been a painter for a long time. Tons of my paintings are about snakes. And even as young as a child, I had tons and tons of books about snakes. I mean, I was, in a word, obsessed with snakes from a very, very young age. So there's some kind of a personal mythology that I've built up around snakes as well. Secondly, it's really interesting to note all of there are seemingly several elements of transgression in the dream as well. Transgressing my father, transgressing the fruit, the owners of the fruit, and then the reserved man's feeling of transgression when the authority figures come down into the valley. And that's all really interesting. This hadn't occurred to me yet, but it makes me think of something that Edinger said about every bit of energy that we free up for individuation comes with a feeling of guilt or with a feeling of transgression or something like that. And there's something very Promethean about that. So it's interesting to just kind of throw those things into the conversation as well.
Yeah, and I want to hear, Charles said that this hit him, had a big impact from the second he heard it. But I just do want to mention one thing. You don't often hear the word transgression outside of the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our transgressions as we forgive those who or what? No, how does that go? I don't know. I forget how it goes. But Charles, what do you think? Just what are you? Charles is just instinctive reactions are always pretty good if he's awake.
Yeah, I'm here. So the whole theme of the dream kind of gives me a this is my completely amateur, uneducated opinion, but there's sort of like a it makes, I look at it and I'm like, there's maybe a kind of like a little bit of an inflation that's caused by a too close of an identification with the self. And what will help sort that out is the energy and mode of the father complex. And this is also where we find the anima. So I feel like the anima is always kind of in the direction in which you need to go. And so I'll just kind of like go through the dream. So going to father's house, that's the direction we're headed. It says the sister's been staying with them, which is a surprise. Has a dead dog on the road that looks like yours, which worries you. This to me, it's like that the anima will be responsible for allowing you to uncage your instincts, to let you live out your instincts, but part of you is afraid that you are going to kill your instincts. The part like the eating of the apple and stuff, and it's weird. It's almost like it's in a reverse order, because like stealing the fruit from the Garden of Eden is almost like like a Promethean thing, and moves you further away from the self and more towards ego development. But we see this kind of like opposite kind of flip around, because then in the next part of the dream we kind of like become the self. And there's this kind of questioning of authority of like, well, who are you to say that one among them is not maybe the Messiah? Which to me, it just intuitively, I assume that the dreamer is saying that I'm one of them. So how do you know it's not me? Because everything in the dream has to do with the individual person. They're all just symbols for the parts of that person. And then like, I find it really interesting that later when we are the self, we are caught between the polarity of the conservative man and the playful woman. And here we are again, like we're afraid that the instincts are going to be killed, and the playful woman in her playing gets wounded. So there's like almost like the dreamer doesn't want to be vulnerable and doesn't want to be playful, doesn't want to be instinctual, because there's a possibility for wounding and pain and damage. Then of course, and then, you know, there were a lot of remarks about it being a kind of far away from the body type of dream. The main image that I, you know, for whatever this is worth, the image that says that to me is having it's difficult to get the girl on the bike while you push. And that just,
Up the hill.
yeah, that for me is, that's the image that I see related to that. You know, I don't think it's an extreme example or anything, but that's just what I see. And of course, the end of the dream is very, that's the very end of the dream is what gripped me the first time I heard it. You have the, you know, as identifying the self caught between this polarity of the conservative man and the playful woman, authority figures start to approach. And so you move your license, you like readjust it. You know, you're messing with your ID. And that is like, you know, to me, like, you know, you're shifting your identity to back to kind of like, you know, more ego. Yeah, I don't know. Those are my thoughts on the dream.
Yeah. Well, I want to. I'd like to at the end here at least hear Kat's dream, but I think that was wonderful, Charles. You always have. First, I want to. Have you ever heard of Christ Pantocrator? You know, I mean, this is a painting of him. Okay. Now, what happens is if you take the left hand side and double it, and the right hand side and double it, you get this here. I wanted to show you this. You get the human and the divine, the human on the left and the divine on the right, you know, and now what was interesting is that you got that figure, the one with the problem with his ID, and then you have the reserved man, who I think is, we met at the beginning of the dream, the father and Kayla. Okay, down back here, those were the outer father and Kayla. And now we're meeting the inner father and Kayla, the reserved man and the woman who will not go up. She's too heavy to take up the hill. You can't do it. You'll never be able to do it. So you're not going to leave the valley with her. If you want to stay with her, you're going to have to stay in the valley. But this was something Jung said one time I thought was so beautiful. How can we in our day have the idea of Christ in ourselves, yet have to make a living as a bookkeeper, to meet Miss Meyer and marry her, have children, and be obliged to live with them? Imagine an evening at the corner tavern as Mr. So-and-so, a glass of beer in front of him, and in his heart the outrageous claim, I am the Son of God. Now, that is the way we should live. You know, I mean, it is that paradox of personality number one. And personality number two is no joke. You know, I mean, this is, you know, John the Baptist says that this divine figure must become more prominent, and I must grow less so. You know, outer awareness must become less prominent, and inner awareness must become more prominent. You know, and you can also look at this one here. You know, come to me, Lord Hermes, I am thou, and thou art I. And then Jung says, this is the relation. The ego stands to the self, a small circle and a large circle, the same and yet not the same. Now, that's the idea aspect, I think, and the fact that we knew all along that we were the Messiah. You know, we told that to the reserved man, the Father, in the first part of the dream. We noticed that when we saw the Messiah, who was outside of us, he looked just like us. And then suddenly we are the Messiah. And then there's these strange other aspects in it that are inexplicably mysterious and enticing. You know, the structures, the snake, the apple, the grapes, you know, the cave, the slide, and then these this group of the collective world who is going to deny all this.
Yeah, in many ways, I think, Charles, you put your finger right on it and articulated much of my ambivalence, because the remark that I make to my father in the dream, I do feel was kind of arrogant and kind of like, yeah, but it could be me.
Yeah.
And then later I'm, you know, like, oh, well, you know, he sure does look a lot like me. So coming out of the dream, writing it down, I felt very, you know, this is not one of those dreams where you're kind of enchanted or have a feeling of wonder or anything. I felt very much like, this kind of feels like a bit of a warning, something like that. So
I don't think it's a warning. I think it is a beautiful religious dream, you know, but it needs to be interpreted without inflation. You know? Yeah,
right. I would say it's a both and I've probably overstated the feeling of a warning or dread or anything, but it did feel a little too hot to touch, and I've wanted to work out a right relationship to it. So
I know it's one that needs to be worked and worked and worked on, because it's bottomless. It really is. It's bottomless. You know, I mean, the Cat said that Charles' dream works on many levels. This one, there's an infinite amount of layers. I mean, not many as so many layers. It is fact that it has it has so many figures in the plot, and each one is pivotal, of pivotal importance. Now, does anybody have any more comments? Because I am hungry. At least, Kat, could you just tell us your dream? If you haven't heard a cat dream before, they are fabulous. And we'll start on it next time, Kat. But let's hear it.
Let me just find it, because it's quite actually straightforward compared to what my other dreams have been.
Yeah, her other dreams were amazing, where you know, God is or the goddess is telling her she's done with you guys. I'm done with
nothing
you.
like that.
Yeah.
I called it a street fight, and I'm in the company of gypsies. That's the title. So I'm walking down a street in a small group of people. I see a couple of my sisters and my brother. I am suddenly by a house, and I'm up on its small stone veranda. My sisters and my brother and a couple of girls are just a little way below me. I see a car pull up on the street, and a man jumps out. He's very angry. He's one of the girls' fathers, and he starts shouting at her, saying stuff about, well, you can go, and if you want to be with him, pointing at my brother. A fight breaks out, and I'm trying to get hold of my brother and my sisters, but the stone wall of the veranda is in my way. I see my dad amongst the commotion, and I say that his friend, who is the man that jumped out the car, had caused all this. My dad angrily says he's not my friend and disappears. I fear my dad is going to go looking for the man. And suddenly I notice that everybody is gone. And I go from place to place. I go to different houses and I'm surrounded by people. They invite me into their home, but they're like gypsy traveler types. I have to go and find my family. And that's the end of the dream.
Great. Well, let's go through it one more time, just so if we have any questions. It is called Street Fight in a Camp of Gypsies.
It's called Street Fight, and I am in the company of gypsies.
Company of Gypsies.
Yeah.
Now you're down near in the street by a small veranda with your sisters and brothers, right?
Well, I'm walking down the street
Walking
in a
down the
small
street.
group
A small group.
part of the group is my sisters and my brother. And then suddenly I'm by a house. But then I'm actually I go up on the veranda, the stone veranda, and my sisters and my brother are a little way below me, sort of thing, only about a foot or so, but do you know what I mean? There is a barrier between us, if you see what I mean.
And a man pulls up, angered that his daughter is having a relationship with this masculine brother aspect within you, right?
Well, she's not actually in the dream having a relationship with my brother. He doesn't like the fact that she's with us.
Oh,
And
that
my
she's with
brother
you.
just happens to be there, and he just sort of has a go at him as well.
Okay. Yeah, well, he's upset that his daughter is with you.
Yeah.
And so why would he be upset, do you think, that his daughter was with you?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
It was so like random, do you know what I mean?
And then a fight breaks out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, the fight is between who, you know?
The man and like everybody in the group, including
Okay.
my brother and my sisters.
Yeah, and you want to go help your brother and sister.
Yeah.
But you can't get to them because there's a wall. There's a wall between you. Okay. And then you see your father and you tell him that his friend is causing a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And he says he is not my friend.
Yeah.
So that's scene one. All right. It's a great little story. Okay. We're gonna have to do it next time, and I'll have it all written down too. I won't be like I did with Charles. Okay, then let's just finish it one more time so we just get. I don't think we're gonna be able to talk about it tonight, but so now suddenly everyone's gone. We're walking around. We're surrounded by people, and we're going from place to place. And now, what was the last aspect of that?
So as I'm walking around from place to place, it's like I'm invited into all these homes.
You were invited into the homes of the gypsies, the traveling people.
That's it.
Okay,
And
so
then-
that's when they showed up. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the
And
end.
then I have to go and find my family, but it's just like each time I go into the house, it's like gypsy traveler people.
Well, we're going to have fun discussing this one. You know, the thing I love about it is you will find in every dream when you have these two just disjointed parts, what they mean is from this, that, from this, that. First, there is this sort of a fight scene, okay? You know, and it ends up with the father denying that he has anything to do with it. And then the second aspect is one where we sort of have a union with I bet it's basically a people of great sensate feeling function, don't you think? The gypsies, I mean, they are, well, you'll have to describe the gypsies, what you think of the gypsies. I'm thinking of their Romanian people, who, they're not necessarily Romanians, but they lived in the area of Southeast Europe. And then they migrated into to Northeast Europe, but they tended to live in little wagons for at least, a while ago. I don't know what they're doing now. But anyway, we're going to have fun with this one. Okay? So we'll start on that next time. But anybody have any final closing comments? Gary or Nick or Charles? Or
I
Dawn?
just want to say about Nick's dream,
Yeah, please.
The whole idea and really core of individuation is having that harmonious and calibrated relation to the self. So it's an extremely valuable and important dream that gets really straight to the point of everything. And I wouldn't take it as some dream where it's like, oh man, I really need to, like, oh, I'm inflated and I need to, like, come down and humble myself. I wouldn't take it like that at all. Like,
No.
it's just a really valuable dream because it's straight to the point. It's right at the core of things.
I'm not kidding either, Nick. I think we could spend 2 90-minute sessions going through this. Really, I mean, to do it justice, because there's a bunch of images in here that I think, well, just teasingly, the reserved man and the girl, the cave girl who can't go up hills, it seems to be related to the much more flat father and Kayla at the start of the dream. I mean, they're just some, and then the idea of the ID and everything. You're not doing anything wrong. I mean, you said at the end, you told the reserve man that you had done nothing wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. I think it's just that this figure in you, who is not you, by the way, is becoming known to you. But anyway, Kat, we'll start on your dream, and thank you, Kat and Charles and Gary. I'm glad you're feeling better, and Dawn. Let's see, what did Dawn say? If someone had already said this, I missed it. I apologize. I know I did hear Gary talking about shuffling the license, so I just imagined it kind of being hidden until he moved it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was, Dawn, don't, always just put a couple. Charles tells me you secretly send him messages, so send them to us too. Anything you say, Dawn, is very helpful. Seriously. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you Monday or Wednesday. Bye, Kat, and Gary, Charles, and Dawn, Nick.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye. Okay.